Hello and welcome to a new show on this channel. My name is Mr. V and I'm currently sat in a camping chair halfway up a flight of stairs. What the hell's going on? Well, I guess that raises a couple questions. Firstly, what is this show? What are we doing here? What are we going to talk about? Secondly, why am I in a camping chair halfway up a flight of stairs? Well, why not? But also we'll come more into that in a second. Firstly, what is this show? So we have just had the 2024 Formula 1 Dutch Grand Prix, the first race back from the summer break, which I thought is as good a time as any to kick off a new show format on this channel. The start of a season would be good as well, but I don't really want to wait 6 months, so summer break it is. I have been thinking about for a while now starting a new show where we talk about the races as they happen. We talk about the race weekends, but not just going into the races and what happened on track, because there's many other podcasts that go into that in more detail, and that's not really what I'm about. I'm going to talk about the races, yes, but I'm also going to talk about the wider world of Formula 1, the things that happen off track, and some of the weirder stories that happen around the paddock, and sometimes nowhere near the paddock at all, but they're still Formula 1 related. That's really what interests me in Formula 1, is the strange, unusual, quirky side of the sport, because Formula 1 is very weird. I don't know if you've noticed. I'm planning to run this show on race weekends, so I'm not planning to do the off weekends, and I'm not planning to do the breaks and the winter break. That may change in the future if this is popular, but for now, we're just going to do race weekends. I will probably be filming this on a Sunday evening after a race, which means most of the time it's going to come out on a Monday. That's going to be the plan. Again, things may change in the future. I've been wanting to do this for a while, just as a way to really connect more with you guys and also talk about more of the things that are going on, because as you know, if you're a regular watcher of the channel, I typically have slightly larger videos that take a long time to make, and they normally focus on bigger topics, which means there's lots and lots of smaller stuff that I don't get to talk about, but I do still find very interesting. Also, I just physically can't make videos fast enough to cover everything in Formula 1, so this is a chance just to make something a bit more laid back. I've been told that my videos are a bit manic, is a word that I've been given multiple times, so something more relaxed, just a bit more of a chat, a camping chair chat. Which brings me on to the second question: why am I sat in a camping chair halfway up a flight of stairs? Well, the reason for the camping chair is it means I can do the show anywhere. For various reasons in my life that are not important for you guys, I travel around quite a lot, and often I'll be watching a Formula 1 race not at home, but in various other parts of the UK or even all around the world. Doing this show from my camping chair rather than my green screen, my green chair rather than my green screen, means that I can bring this to you from just about anywhere. All I need is my little chair. Well, and a microphone, some cabling, an audio adapter, a laptop, and a camera with a tripod, and really an internet connection. But other than that, I don't need anything. I can bring this to you from anywhere. In the future, if I am going to various races or doing other weird stuff that comes from being a Formula 1 content creator, I can put the chair wherever I may be and still deliver you this podcast. And I am intending to do this as a podcast. You may be watching this on YouTube, but I am intending to also put this out in audio-only formats. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I mean, you can just listen to stuff on YouTube as a podcast as well. If you are listening to this on audio-only formats, then clearly I've been successful, so that's good news. But if you're watching this on YouTube and you would like to hear the smooth, sultry sounds of Mr. V's voice in your ears when you're on your way to work, or I don't know when you listen to podcasts, you can do that, because I will be uploading this in various different places, information down below. So yes, the camping chair means that this show is portable, it's on the move. This week, I'm halfway up a flight of stairs, because why not? It's not really any of your business, is it? That was a bit antagonistic, didn't really mean to be antagonistic, sorry about that. So because of all of that, this show, someone just slammed the door, this show is going to be Mr. V's Camping Chair Chats, Mr. V's CCC for short. Obviously, most other Formula 1 podcasts have some kind of racing pun, just off the top of my head, and these will probably be real podcasts. The Inside Line, the Missed Apex, late breaking the last lap. I was actually on the last lap podcast. That one's definitely real. I could have done a racing pun, but A, I couldn't think of one, and B, I'm not really known for doing stuff the same as everyone else, am I? I prefer to do stuff a little bit different, so Mr. V's camping chair chat it is. And so, with those introductions out the way, we can begin the very first installment of Mr. V's camping chair chat right here, right now. So, the Dutch Grand Prix weekend 2024. A couple big stories coming into this weekend. Firstly, as was announced on, I want to say, Thursday, maybe it was Wednesday evening, Jack Doohan has been officially confirmed as the second driver for Alpine for 2025. He was the strong favourite for the last few weeks at least. People were basically talking about it as if it was already done, but it's now officially confirmed from the team. At the second time of asking, they have finally managed to sign an Australian Alpine Academy driver. Only took him 2 attempts, which is pretty good odds, honestly. So yeah, it's good. It's good news. I'm personally very happy with this news. I always like to see a couple new rookies come into Formula One. It's nice to see some new talent show what they've got, because Formula One is a different beast. You get people who come up through F2 and F3 who just absolutely storm the competition. Clearly they should be in F1. But sometimes people have an okay junior career, but actually if they were given an F1 opportunity, they would absolutely smash it. As of late, we haven't had all that much throughput into Formula One, but now Jack Doohan is our second rookie for 2025. I'm very happy about that. He may not be the last rookie for next year. We'll come on to that in a second. But one stat which I found very interesting, I think this was reported by Autosport, is that Jack Doohan is the first person in 15 years actually promoted from the Alpine / Renault / I guess Lotus it was for a few years. The first person promoted from the Alpine Junior Academy into Alpine, or actually into Formula One at all, in 15 years, which is ludicrous. Like, why do you have a junior academy if it takes over a decade just to get one person? Obviously, they tried for last year with Oscar Piastri. Didn't go so great for Alpine. And Alpine have had lots of drivers in their academy who have gone on to drive in Formula One. Piastri, obviously, but also Alexander Albon actually was in the Alpine Academy many years ago, several years before he was in F1. Zhou Guanyu, again, was Renault Academy, but he left the Academy before then being picked up by Sauber. Esteban Ocon was in the Academy, but left several years before coming to F1. Who else do we have? Charles Pic was Renault Academy. And then before that, Romain Grosjean in 2009 went from the Renault Academy into a Renault. 15 years, and actually it'll be 16 years for next year that it took Alpine to get another rookie into the sport, which is kind of crazy, but it shows a wider issue with the throughput into our sport. Driver careers are getting longer as, sports science gets better, people are having less horrendous fatal crashes, and at the same time we have fewer seats in Formula One than we ever did. 20 cars on the grid still seems like a lot, but back in the day, back in the 90s, there were like 40 odd people showing up to an F1 weekend attempting to get into the race. We had to have not just qualifying, but pre-qualifying because there were so many people. So the chances to get up into Formula One are much lower now. And it's a real shame because it hurts younger drivers. Obviously, lots of the great drivers of all time have been really pulled up through the junior schemes, and they were touted from long before they got to Formula One as being the next big thing in F1. But there's a few people in Formula One who just had a sort of okay junior career, but did manage to get the opportunity and then really prove their worth. We're not getting as many opportunities for that. Really, the only way to get to Formula One now is to be that superstar driver who wins, Formula 2 first year, Formula 3 first year. That's tough. That's a lot of pressure on a younger driver. It's a real shame. And so Jack Doohan becomes our second rookie in for 2025 after Oliver Behrman signed for Haas. He may not be the last, though. There's strong reports that we're going to get Antonelli in a Mercedes for next year, and it's seeming more and more likely that we are going to get Liam Lawson somewhere. Helmut Marko has gone on record this week And I believe the quote is, he will be in one of our cars. That would seem to indicate a RB, a V-carb, for next year, potentially displacing Ricciardo up into Red Bull or out of the sport. Who knows? We're going to talk about that more in the future, because you may not have noticed this, but every time someone comes into the sport, someone has to go out. So we're going to talk at the end of this show about who might be leaving to make way for all these rookies. The other strange news for this week is Uralkali. Remember them? Uralkali, the sponsor of Haas for the 2021 season in their wonderful, definitely not Russian flag livery, dropped by Haas just before the 2022 season due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. They're still knocking around, apparently. Haas terminated that contract, and it was determined that they were within their rights to terminate their contract. Normally, a contract will have some kind of clause that says if one party causes significant public perception loss for the other, a contract can be terminated. You know, running a Russian livery and being quite clearly a huge Russian company associated with the government there, that's a public perception loss, and so it's understandable that Haas ended that contract. But it has been determined recently in court that Haas do owe Uralkali a load of money. They had to pay them back, presumably because Uralkali gave them a lump sum payment at the start of 2022. Haas have not paid Uralkali so far, and so at the start of this weekend in Zandvoort, Uralkali turned up with a load of bailiffs, literally just turned up to the Haas garage or paddock and said, all of your cars belong to us, give us the cars. If you're not going to pay us, then we're just going to take all of this equipment as collateral. And by equipment, I mean 2 whole Formula 1 cars. So the story goes that apparently Haas received notice of this, and they did make the payment late on Friday. The payment is allegedly for $9 million US, and so it's not that simple just to open up like Monzo and hit send. Like, it takes a long time to send that kind of money. Allegedly, it's been sent via the Middle East, presumably by some bank or some third-party finance company. I don't know. I don't work in Middle Eastern finance. But they said the money needs to go via the Middle East, and they did it on Friday evening. So it's not going to happen over the weekend. It could happen Monday morning, but potentially it could be kind of middle of next week. Apparently, Uralkali have not rejected the claim that Haas has sent the money, but they are not going to let any equipment leave the Zandvoort Grand Prix circuit until they receive their money, which could jeopardize Haas's race in Monza. It's not that long of a turnaround, this race. Zandvoort to Monza is just a road transit. You put all the stuff in the back of a lorry and you drive it, basically just overnight. So most teams will get their stuff there probably actually Monday morning, maybe on Tuesday. It's not that bad if Haas have to set off on, say, Tuesday evening, because you would start your setup on like a Wednesday. That is okay. It's not as bad as, say, Las Vegas to Qatar in 1 week, because if this had happened in Las Vegas, Haas probably would have had to miss Qatar. So it's not too bad, but this definitely could have some knock-on effects for Haas's setup for Monza next weekend. We could see them running like limited practice running. Maybe they won't be able to get out on the Friday for P1 and P2. It's just not the kind of distraction that you want if you're running a Formula 1 team. So it's definitely not a positive for them. Very strange story. I don't know when it was determined that Haas had to pay Uralkali. It gives the vibe that they've been avoiding doing that if it's got to a point where Uralkali has had to turn up and impound all of their stuff. I tweeted this the other day. I don't recall there ever being a team or like a team owner having a more tumultuous kind of 10-year period in Formula 1 than Gene Haas. Like, this must have aged Gene Haas 40 years at least over the last decade. I don't know how that man gets any sleep at night. I don't know how he has hair left. I would say it's all gone grey, but I think he's had grey hair for a while. But yeah, it's just ludicrous, the storyline of Haas in Formula 1. They only started in 2016. They were meant to start in 2015, couldn't get everything ready. Fair enough, Formula One's a big deal. Started in 2016. They obviously had Rich Energy and that whole debacle, not getting paid, having to pull out from a sponsorship mid-season. They flambéed Romain Grosjean that one time, which is quite a big deal. They've had their association with their lovely Russian livery, which is kind of a bad look at the start of 2022. And now that's come and reared its teeth once again. It's just an absolute nightmare at Haas, always, it seems. Like, that team cannot catch a break. There's no conclusion there. I'm just pointing out that it's just insane. You could make a movie about this team and people would watch the film and go like, well, this is ludicrous. Like, this is unrealistic. So yes, chances of some disruption for Haas at Monza next weekend. I don't know if they were particularly expecting good results in Monza. They've been doing okay recently. Hulkenberg just came P11 in Zandvoort. Obviously, Monza is nothing like Zandvoort, but they've been like scratching at the bottom of the points recently. If they did have disruptions that knock them down a few places or mean they can't compete, worst case, it's a real shame. It's particularly a shame for Hulkenberg, who's having a very good season, but it's also a shame for Magnussen, who is not having a good time and really needs as many opportunities as possible to prove himself if he wants to stay in Formula One. Talking about drivers who might be at risk, Magnussen is absolutely one of them. And so we get on to the race weekend itself. We start the weekend with qualifying on Saturday. The big story of that was Alex Albon into Q3 and actually qualified P8. Didn't even come P10 at the bottom of Q3. P8 in his Williams. Williams obviously have done well in Zandvoort before. I wouldn't say he scored points last year. I didn't fact check that, and I'm not going to because I'm in the middle of recording this, but I believe he scored points last year. Excellent qualifying performance by him. I will say I was on a train. I was trying to watch qualifying on a train that kept going through tunnels. Not an optimal viewing experience. Would not recommend. A couple hours after quali, though, news broke that Alex Albon had been disqualified from qualifying for floor dimensions. His car was called in for kind of advanced scrutineering. This happens to normally 3 cars, I want to say, on Saturday evening of a race. Every car goes through standard checks. They weigh them, fuel samples, tire pressures, whatever. A few cars are brought in for more extensive checks. They check wing flexibility. They measure loads of components. I think they look at like ECU flashes. Anyway, whatever. They brought in Albon's car. His floor was 3 millimeters too wide. It's a new floor they've brought after the summer break. 3 millimeters. But rules are rules, and any number of millimeters too wide is still too wide. So he's disqualified for running illegal components. Had to start, actually not in the pit lane. I think he started on the grid, but just P19. Various team members talking to the media this morning confirmed they didn't even have to change the floor. They didn't have to go back to an old floor. They actually just adjusted the new one they had. Martin Brundle on the Sky F1 broadcast was very keen to push this narrative that they shaved it down, with with a planer or with some sandpaper and like scraped off some material. He did actually catch Pat Fry, I want to say, is the team principal for Williams, on the grid walk, and he's like, did you shave off some material? And Pat's like, no, we just adjusted it. So I'm assuming what he means by that is they bent it, or it might have been an adjustable piece, maybe like a hinged flap, which they just changed the angle of to get the side-to-side dimensions back into line. So Alex is running the same floor, just with a slightly different configuration, gutting to lose out on his quali P8. The other main stories from qualifying, both Hamilton and Sainz out in Q2. Sainz qualified P11, and Hamilton just behind him. They were both obviously bumped up when Albon dropped down, but Hamilton also received a 3-place penalty for impeding Perez. Not going to go into that. He got a penalty. That's just what happened. So we start the race. Norris on pole, Verstappen, then Piastri, and then various other people. There has been a lot of discussion over the summer break and actually throughout this whole year, even before that, about Norris's race starts. Obviously, this is Norris's 4th time starting on pole, but he's also started a lot of races in P2 and near the front. He's gained a reputation of not having the best opening laps in Formula 1, which is not great if you want to win a race. Like, if you want to finish the race P1, the best position you can be in at the end of the first lap is P1. So being bad at race starts is really detrimental. It's not a good reputation to have. Sadly, the race starts, Norris immediately off the line, gets some wheel spin and is passed by Verstappen, exits turn 1 in second place, and actually finishes lap 1 in second place. However, it became immediately apparent in Zandvoort that McLaren has by far and away the best race pace now. They brought more upgrades. They obviously have a big upgrade package in Miami, which is what propelled them to like winning race pace. They brought another one for Zandvoort, and it's not even close anymore. Like, Norris was flying through this race. It took him 18 laps to pass Verstappen. He was on the back of Verstappen the whole way from the start, passed him on lap 18, and then immediately just drove off up the road, kind of reminiscent of a 2023 Verstappen doing the same thing to like Perez or whoever was behind him. By the end of the race, Norris wins by 22 seconds, which, you know, in the world, in day-to-day life, not a huge amount of time. That is an astronomical gap in Formula One to finish a race by. Winning by over 10 seconds is big news. 22 seconds is like ludicrous domination pace. So the moral of the story is McLaren have made a quick race car. It's looking like it's going to be quite a few rounds until anyone has overall best pace or like matching pace to be able to challenge McLaren. Obviously, different races have different characteristics. We have Monza up next, a very high power track, and it favors people with good DRS. This could be good for Red Bull, and Red Bull's always strong in, let's say, Mexico due to the weird requirements of having low air pressure. There's all strange outliers like this, but on any given weekend, McLaren now seems to be by far and away the quickest car. It's going to be a while till anyone can comfortably challenge for the win, I want to say. I'm not going to say that McLaren are going to win every race because they haven't been the hottest on strategy this year. But they definitely, someone's just slamming doors, they definitely are the favourites. Which brings us on to the title battle. Following Zandvoort, Norris is 70 points behind Verstappen. He won the race and got fastest lap. Verstappen came P2, which is an 8-point gain for Norris, so it brings him up from 78 to 70 points behind. We have 9 races left. No weird double point stuff like we had in 2016. None of that. So just 9 races to make up a 70-point deficit. If Norris wins every race and Verstappen comes P2 every race, that's a 7-point gap. Verstappen will win the championship by 7 points after Abu Dhabi. If Norris wins every race with the fastest lap and Verstappen comes P2, Norris will win the championship by maths 2 points. That shouldn't have taken that long. Obviously, other options are available. I'm not saying that these two are just going to finish P1 and P2 every race, but that's kind of what Norris needs in order to win this championship. I don't think Norris is going to win every single race from now on. That would put him on a 10-win streak, which is quite hard to do, we've heard. I also don't think Verstappen is going to come P2 every race. I would expect Piastri to also be up in question for the win or for finishing P2. So, yeah, Norris needs to outscore Verstappen by about 7.5 points every weekend. It's doable. It is doable. But given there'll be a couple of weekends where Verstappen finishes ahead, you know, some bad McLaren strategy, which wouldn't be the first time this year, or just an engine failure, DNF for whatever reason, and Verstappen outscores him by 18, there's going to be weekends when Verstappen scores more. So on kind of like the average, normal, quiet weekend without any crazy crashes, such as this weekend was, Norris really needs to be outscoring Verstappen by probably 10 points plus, which means he needs Piastri, it would be the first choice, or someone to be getting ahead of Verstappen also. Piastri's definitely been looking good. He looks like he has the skills to pay that bill. This weekend was a bit of a quiet one for Piastri. And so really there wasn't anyone up there to challenge Verstappen. While it is possible for Norris to make this comeback and win the title, a 70-point deficit would be the largest deficit ever overcome to win the Drivers' Championship by. The largest ever is 46 points, which Verstappen made over Leclerc in 2022. To put that into some perspective, 70 points is a lot. And actually, that's not even the biggest deficit it's been. After Britain this year, it was 84 points between them. An 84-point comeback for the championship, I think, would make this the largest ever comeback percentage-wise in the history of the sport. Again, didn't fact-check this. I kind of feel like I should have. We're learning. It's the very first episode. I don't see it happening. While it could happen, I'm pretty confident Verstappen is going to take this title just because, there's going to be a race where Verstappen gets P1, Norris P2, and Verstappen claws back the 7 points. There's going to be a race where probably Norris DNFs, like an engine failure or something, and so Verstappen gains 25 or 18. I just can't see Norris managing it. And that would be with a team that's rock solid on strategy, let alone McLaren that is not solid on strategy. So looking down the grid from the front two, Piastri, Norris's teammate, started in P3, finished the race P4, about a second and a half behind Leclerc. It's kind of a mixture of, it wasn't the hottest weekend for Piastri, it was kind of just like an okay weekend. It was a very good weekend for Leclerc, actually. Very solid qualifying effort, and just really solid race pace, actually from both Ferraris on a track that hasn't suited Ferrari previously. And so I think even Leclerc was surprised. He came up in the post-race interviews and he said that normally I wouldn't celebrate a P3, but this weekend it's a good result for us. And I think they were expecting to finish, like P6, P7, probably behind Piastri and the Mercedes. And so excellent weekend from Leclerc. Kind of just nothing to write home about for Piastri. We then have Sainz P5 up from P10. Excellent drive from him, but also, as I said, that Ferrari did have surprisingly good pace. And then we have P6 Perez. Probably shouldn't be in P6, probably should have been P7 for Perez, but he was gifted that position by Russell. For some reason, about 15 laps before the end, Mercedes pitted Russell from their long stint onto softs, putting him about 19 seconds behind Perez, which he then couldn't make up. It was like over a second a lap he would have to make up in differential, and he just couldn't, which is kind of not surprising. I don't know what Mercedes were thinking with that. Like, I suppose they'd been running simulations and they were confident Perez was going to pass Russell anyway, but it didn't look like it. Like, Sainz had just passed him, but Perez really wasn't catching that fast. And when they actually got up close, I'm pretty sure Russell has the racecraft to hold Perez behind. It was kind of a baffling move. And it also led to Russell almost being passed by teammate Hamilton, who did actually finish behind him in P8. Just baffling from Mercedes, a team that hasn't always been the best on strategy. They're kind of masked by their previous performance. Mercedes has been shaky on strategy in the past. It's a shaky call again, very questionable. I would be pretty annoyed if I was George Russell because they just gave up a place. It's a couple points. This therefore kind of masked a slow weekend for Perez as well. Not a terrible weekend for Perez. I mean, by Perez standards, nowhere near a bad weekend for Perez standards. But not a great weekend. Not the kind of weekend you need to put in if there's loads of questions about your future in the career. Similar to Piastri, kind of just nothing to write home about. Perez started P5 and managed to turn that into a P6, which actually should have been a P7 on the road. Again, in the car that is clearly the second fastest, was passed by Leclerc, but Leclerc had a very good race, was passed by Sainz, who started P10. This shouldn't be happening. And so while it's not a disaster class from Perez this weekend, it's still not really good enough. If Red Bull has ambitions of winning the Constructors' Championship, you can't slide backwards and lose places to someone who started P10. I mean, really, you can't finish off the podium. So the woes continue for Perez. He's obviously had a bit of a reset. Summer break is good. I believe lots of Perez's issues are psychological. I think he's one of those drivers who is very much affected by momentum. And Christian Horner even said in an interview at the start of this weekend that Perez was in a downward spiral. That's not news, I don't think. That's not shocking. But it's interesting to hear a team principal admit that. Normally a team principal would be like, oh, he's professional. He's been working over the summer break to really focus on the second half. It's quite funny actually to see Christian Horner just come out and be like, yeah, he was in a downward spiral. Like, he was getting bad. The whole Perez drama it continues to be its own massive story. I could talk about that for ages, the reasons why and why not he's still there. We will likely touch on that because I'm going to talk about drivers at risk. It's fair to say that Perez's seat is not only determined by his on-track performance. And I think we'll just leave it at that. And then the final notable thing from the race, which you would have caught if you have seen race highlights, a 4-car overtake on Kevin Magnussen. Kevin Magnussen was trying to try out some of his old tricks and slow a big pack of cars to help Hulkenberg gain a big advantage, which did work to an extent. He had a train of 4 cars behind him. It was Albon, Gasly, and then both of the Aston Martins. All 4 of them overtook him coming off the final banking onto the home straight. To get overtaken by 4 cars at once is wild. It was great to watch. It was like watching oval racing. It was like a NASCAR move going 4 wide out of the final banking. It's not good. It's not good if you're Magnussen. I think Magnussen's kind of accepted his fate, that he's not there as a superstar kid to miraculously get loads of points for the team. He's there as a human shield. He's there as a meat bag to get in the way so that Hulkenberg can do good stuff up ahead. If they've had a discussion within Haas that those are the roles now, then Magnussen is doing a good job on that. Looking at Magnussen as an individual, as a driver, his results in isolation, it's not a good look. It's not a good look for Magnussen. And so I think we need to get on to talking about our drivers at risk. So as I said, we've now had Behrman and Doohan confirmed as new rookies for 2025. And it's looking very likely that we're going to have number 3, Kimi Antonelli, and potentially number 4, Liam Lawson. There's also rumours of number 5, Mick Schumacher, not a rookie, but back into the sport. I'm not gonna focus on that one, but at least four new people into the sport next year. Formula One has to operate on a 1 in, 1 out basis. So 4 people in means we need to find 4 names who could be leaving the sport at the end of this season. That's actually not that easy to finalize all of those. It seems very likely that Logan Sargent is going to be one of them. Obviously, Williams have signed Sainz alongside Albon, so Sainz has directly taken Sargent's seat. There's absolutely 0 rumors of Logan Sargent going to another team. And if you were the team principal of like Sauber, why the hell would you sign Logan Sargent? I'm not trying to be rude, but like honestly, what possible reason could you have? So that's 1 out of 3, but we still need to find 3 other people. I was just talking about him. Kevin Magnussen is really not having a hot season right now. And again, it's not exactly young. I don't see any teams picking up Magnussen. Haas is full. Haas has got Ocon and Behrman. I don't see any teams picking up Magnussen, so I'm pretty sure Kevin is going to be number 2, axed from the sport at the end of this year. Which really then brings us to the 2 Sauber drivers, both Valtteri Bottas and Guan Yu Zhou. So Sauber do have one of the open seats, one of the unconfirmed seats for next year. The other ones being at Mercedes alongside Russell, and at RB, technically, is not confirmed for their second seat, whether it's going to be Ricciardo or someone else. We'll come on to that in a second. Sauber do have an open seat. They have obviously signed Nico Hülkenberg, a lovely German driver, in preparation to become a German team. It makes sense from PR standpoint, and also Hülkenberg has been driving phenomenally, like as well as Haas could possibly have asked for. So that makes perfect sense. Sauber do still have one seat to fill. It's not looking that likely they're going to keep either of their current drivers. Zhou Guanyu is just, he's not showing anything special really. He finished last on the road today, P20, as there were no retirements, and that's kind of been the story all season. There's no kind of flashes of brilliance for Zhou, which would encourage any teams to picking up, and so it's seeming likely that this is going to be his final season. It's a shame. I've said this countless times, kind of politically, from PR standpoint, it would make a lot of sense for Sauber to keep Zhou because they're going to become Audi, and Audi's number one market for car sales nowadays is China. The luxury car market in China is astronomical, and it's dominated by the European big three, Audi, BMW, Mercedes. Audi know where their bread is buttered. They know that China makes the money. And I should say, because I used to work for a major automotive OEM, it wasn't one of the German big three. But I was involved in meetings for like income and company performance and whatever. You make a huge, I can't even bring into words, like unfathomable amounts of profit in China. You can make the cars for a lot less money, and there's a lot less other kind of expenses go into selling a car in China, but you can still sell them for quite a lot. So you just make just like buckets and buckets of cash every time you sell a car in China. And China's quite a big place. It's got quite a lot of people, and so you sell a lot of cars there as well. So it's a huge cash cow for Audi. You could see why, from like a PR, from a political standpoint, they would want to have a Chinese driver to capitalize on that Chinese market, become like the face of performance and luxury in China. But if your Chinese driver is just finishing last on the road every single weekend, that kind of doesn't work. And so I don't think Zhou is really showing what he needs to show in order to stop him from going. So I'm pretty sure that Zhou is also going to be one of our casualties of the new rookies coming into Formula One, which then brings us on to Valtteri Bottas. Valtteri Bottas, obviously, very popular driver, and still has some flashes. But those flashes, I'm not talking weekly, I'm not even talking monthly, I'm talking like 1 or 2 flashes a year. And actually, but why the door slamming? And actually, he is last in the championship. There are 3 drivers on 0 points. It's Zhou Guanyu, Logan Sargent, and Valtteri Bottas. Bottas is bottom of the 3 because his highest finish this year is P13, whereas Zhou and Sargent both have a P11. That's just not good enough. Like, Bottas is in there. He's the more experienced driver. He's in there to help with car development. I don't know if he's any good at that. The car's not getting any faster, which is not a good sign of his skill at that. The other reason to have this kind of experienced, old, like proven quick talent is that they have the ability to, every now and again, bring out these barnstorming performances and place the car higher than it should be finishing. His best finish isn't even as good as Guan Yu Zhou's. Like, they need Bottas to be scratching on the points. If anyone was going to sneak a P10, it would be Valtteri Bottas, and he hasn't even come anywhere close to that. Bottas is also having a kind of a quiet season, nothing to write home about. Suboptimal is the word for Bottas this year. The only reason to keep him around would be like a Vettel or like an Alonso to just drive that car way faster than should be mechanically possible, and he's not doing that. So again, I can't see Bottas staying. So Sargent, Magnussen, Zhou, and Bottas all looking very likely to be out of the sport next year, or will have a very strong chance, I should say. We do need to mention two other names, Sergio Perez and Daniel Ricciardo. As I said, officially, the final RB seat is not finalized. If you look at the graphics that Formula One love putting out, where they show the driver's face in a big circle, there's still just a big question mark next to Yuki Tsunoda for next year. Daniel Ricciardo is not confirmed. I think everyone in the sport, apart from diehard Perez fans, want to see Ricciardo still there. He's been doing okay. He's had some good performances. Yuki's also had some good performances. So, like, Daniel hasn't been demolishing Yuki, but he's not been like really far behind him either. But just from a personality and a sentimentality standpoint, I think there's a huge will for Ricciardo to stay. However, if we are to believe Helmut Marko, that Liam Lawson would be in RB next year, and if you're going to believe anyone, it would be Helmut Marko, because he's the person that decides. Well, he's one of the key people that decides. If we're going to believe him that Liam Lawson's going to be in RB, that would mean really the only way for Ricciardo to stay in the sport, I mean, other than some miraculous signing for Sauber, which I guess is not off the cards, but the only way for Ricciardo to stay in the sport would be to take Perez's seat at Red Bull. Now, I would say if the drivers were anyone else and you just looked at numbers on a page, you should do that. Ricciardo is insanely popular and he is still quick on his day. I think the confidence boost of being put up into the senior team again would be maybe the confidence boost he would need to drive at his full potential. There is obviously the story that Perez sells 60% of all Red Bull merchandise. I still cannot confirm that's true. Everyone keeps saying it. No one has ever confirmed it's true. The source for that quote, I should add, is David Croft. Said it on the broadcast one time, didn't cite his sources. There are no other sources to prove that that's true. So I don't actually buy it, to be honest. But then we have to understand that Perez has a significant backing. I want to say Mexican backing, but not necessarily all Mexican, but he has a significant backing. His sponsors in Telmex, but also some key figures, mainly Carlos Slim, and according to some people, Formula One media itself. Perez has some key backers that make this complicated. It would seem that basically everyone at Red Bull wants to get rid of Perez. When you hear Horner talking about him, he clearly doesn't care about him. I mean, it's no secret that Marko doesn't like Perez. I mean, Marko doesn't like anyone. Marko doesn't like human beings. And Perez is one of them, so Marko doesn't like Perez. We really get the vibe that the entire Red Bull organization wants Perez, the person, out of that seat. But Perez, the business commodity, is not that easy to dislodge. And so while it's seeming more and more popular of an opinion that Ricciardo is going to get moved up to Red Bull next year, it's not that simple. There were obviously some discussions right after Belgium, just before the summer break. Lots of people were expecting an announcement that Perez has been dropped, but Red Bull Racing came out and announced that they've decided to make no change and Perez is going to continue on as normal. He obviously has his 2-year contract. I get the feeling that they're going to sort of quietly do something end of the year. Like during the Christmas break when people aren't reading Formula One news, they're going to quietly announce Perez has decided to retire or something, is the feeling I get. But there's so many factors at play. So I think there is also a strong chance we could see Ricciardo leaving the sport unless he gets a drive at Sauber, would be the only place for him. If you were Ricciardo, would you want to drive for Sauber? Like from being one of the best and best loved drivers in the sport to just bouncing around various bottom of the table teams, would he want that? I don't know. I think if I was Ricciardo, I would just kind of be like, nah, I'm done. I've made my money. I've launched a vineyard. I've got a pretty sweet clothing brand. I own like a massive ranch in Australia and probably in America as well. He'd be like, you know what? Nah, I'm going to go drive a NASCAR or IndyCar. See ya. So we could see the end of Ricciardo at the end of this year, but I think there will be enormous collective heartbreak throughout the Formula One fandom if that does happen. Only time will tell. And with that, it looks like I have rambled the whole way to the end of my notes. This may have been just loads of run-on sentences and ramblings of my mind. It's the first time, okay? I'm not a career podcaster. I'm not really that used to just sitting down and talking for this length of time. There's a reason I make edited videos, but I'm looking to make this a regular thing. Please let me know if you enjoyed this. Please let me know what kind of topics you'd like me to cover. I will cover the races, at least in some small part every week, but if you want to see more of the like non-race news, some other weird stuff, some other games and strange discussions, some guests, let me know. Let me know what you'd like to see. Leave a like down below. Subscribe to the podcast specifically, I think is a thing you can do on YouTube. And also, if you're listening on audio-only platforms, Spotify, Apple, give it a follow, give it a 5-star rating, I think is a thing. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. I don't know what I'm doing. I just fully don't know what I'm doing. I'm a man who owns a microphone and a camera. At least it sounds nice. I hope. Anyway, I'm going to end it there before I say any more stuff to embarrass myself. I've been Mr. V. This has been the very first installment of Mr. V's Camping Chair Chat. Next time, I will be coming to you from who knows where. Probably not in a staircase. Somewhere else. We shall see. I hope you've enjoyed. Let me know what you'd like to see in the future. Monza next weekend, so I will see you in 7 days' time. See ya.